Back in 2021, in my original Death Stranding photo mode video, I had stated that Kojima had said that you can learn photography using video game photo modes. What he had said was shared across multiple news outlets, one of which actually name dropped me, link in the description, and now we're here, 4 years later, for Death Stranding 2. Let's take a look at the photo mode and see what we can learn from it. My name is Mir, and let's get started, shall we? Now, I want to kick this off with the Polaroid feature. This isn't available at the very beginning of the game, you will have to play it to unlock it, but basically it's you get a camera, you get a retro camera, and you can have fun with this Polaroid mode. Now, I won't spoil anything, but I will tell you how long it does take and where you can expect to find this feature. You'll have to play all the way to episode 7, kind of the later half of episode 7, and you will have to deliver to someone known as the mechanic. And once you deliver the item, you will get a retro camera. Since I'm focusing on the main story with some sub-stories here and there, this took me about 23 hours to unlock this feature. Your hours may vary depending on how many sub-stories you pick up on or other activities that you do. I'll say this, for a photo mode feature, this is actually pretty impressive. The controls are quite limited, but having actors and actresses mocap different expressions, facial expressions, movements, and so on, specifically for you to take a picture, is actually quite neat. It's actually something new that I've never seen in a photo mode before. And once you take the picture, you'll get a Polaroid. You have the option to retake the picture or give them the photo, and if you take a photo without their faces in there, Dollman will let you know that, hey, maybe we should take a different picture for them.
You can't see their faces in this picture, you know. They're not going to like that. Let's get another one.
Now, what they do on screen will also depend on where you put them. So if you put them in the corridor, they'll be on the stairs. You put them in the armory, they'll pick up the weapons. And also, these are not infinite movements either. There is a time limit and it does not loop. So you'll have a limited amount of time, and then someone will say something prompting the end of that session, and then it will go into the next session.
Just forget about it.
So just keep that in mind when you're taking pictures in this mode. If you ever want to access it after this has been unlocked, go into your room on the DHV Magellan and you'll see a camera sitting there underneath Dollman. Alright, let's move on to the main photo mode. To access the photo mode, hit the left side of the touchpad. So the first thing I want to talk about is the controls, and everything's laid out to you on the side and at the bottom, that how to control the camera movement. The one that sticks out to me is L3 to increase the camera speed. So you can move the camera with the left joystick and everything's fine, but if you need to move it quickly, of course you can just hold down L3 and then move it much faster. The other one I want to mention is R3, which will bring up this grid. This grid is known as the rule of thirds. It's not a definite rule, you're allowed to break it, but basically it'll help you compose your shot. The idea behind the rule of thirds is that you can use the little sections here. So let's say, for example, I can put Sam here on this line, or I could do this where the horizon is right there on that line going across at the bottom. I can do that where it shows more of the landscape on the screen, and then the top part where the line is, it shows the sky. So really it's up to you, but this will help you guide and compose your shot. So something else I'd like to bring up is how to take the shot. I get comments all the time on these videos of, hey, how do I take this shot? And since I'm on PS5, you would have to hit the share button and then take a screenshot. Of course, like hide the menu. But in this case, it's made a lot easier for you because all you have to do is just hit X and the shot is taken. One thing I do appreciate is where you can actually use your shots. So one example that I really like is if you go into your private room at a facility, you can actually change the background on the wall. Change it to a shot that you've taken. You can zoom out and make it look like there's a little TV on your wall, or you can zoom all the way in, pretty far in actually, and it still retains the image quality as well. I'm kind of surprised that the picture looks this good zooming all the way in. Another control that I'm actually a big fan of is that if you change any of the settings, so in this game tab you have like your UI signs and Odor Deck scan, you can change these settings, right? And if you decide to back out of the photo mode, it'll ask you like, hey, would you like to save this setting before you leave? And if you hit yes, go back into the photo mode, you'll see the signs that I just turned off stays off. And this is a feature that's fantastic. I appreciate the fact that you can actually save the settings as you exit the photo mode. So let's move on to the camera tab. So here you have your focal length, and if you move it to the left, you have your wide angle. So this introduces your wide angle distortion, where your foreground and your background, they're spread apart. They look like they're further away from each other. If you move focal length all the way to the right, this here is your telephoto, where your foreground and your background, they're pushed together. They look like they're right next to each other. One thing I actually really appreciate about this photo mode is the wide range of the focal length. So for example, if I move this camera as far back as I can go, I can actually zoom quite far in, all the way up to 1000 millimeters. And you can see it makes both the mountain in the background much larger, and it makes Sam much larger too. And on the other side, if I go all the way to the wide angle side of things, you can go all the way to 10 millimeter, which will give you a super wide lens. And this is perfect for a landscape shot just like this. Wow, this looks really good. So next is your roll. And if you go in either direction, you can actually change this into a portrait shot. Next, you have your depth of field, and you can go ahead and turn this on, and it'll introduce this blur. This blur in photography is known as bokeh. You can also turn on the autofocus, and when you do that, it'll focus straight onto Sam. And down here at the aperture, it's actually marked in f-stops, which is what you'll see on a real camera. The easiest way to remember this is that the lower the f-stop number, the more blur or bokeh there is, and the higher the f-stop number, the more it stops down and more gets in focus. Speaking of focus, we can actually turn off the autofocus and adjust the focus ourselves. And the recommendation I have here is turn the aperture to 1.4, that way you see everything blurred out, and then adjust the focus where you feel it sees fit. So let's say if I put Sam in focus, little tip, if you're taking a picture of someone, focus on their eyes. So let's say right here, and then I can adjust the aperture or the blur accordingly to where I want it. Next is the brightness/filter tab, and in here we have the exposure. So if you move the exposure to the left, you'll see that the brightest points of the image start to get darker, and if you move it to the right, it'll get a lot brighter. For a scene like this, I actually really like the fact that we can turn the exposure down quite significantly and change it where it doesn't even look like a daytime shot anymore. Next is the contrast, and contrast is typically the relationship between your highlights and your shadows. So if I move it here to the left, you'll see that it starts to get faded and the highlights and shadows start to blur together. And if I move it to the right, you'll see that the highlights and shadows start to have this hard to find line between the two. Next is color filters. So when you turn that on, you have a bunch of filter types and the filter strength. So you can see that these are very tasteful. These are actually really well done. Some of the filters also have some insane color palettes as well. And my favorite part about this is the fact that the filter strength starts at a value higher than the very end, so you have the option to reduce the filter as well. So you can just add a little bit if you'd like. Or you can go the opposite direction and add quite a bit of the filter if you want. Next is noise, and this is a personal preference. You can add the noise or grain to the image if you'd like. That's really up to you. So moving on to the lens effect tab, here you have a vignette, and go ahead and turn that on, and you'll see that you have a vignette size and strength. So right now it's set to 25%, and you can see that it probably didn't change the image that much. That's because the vignette is actually in the corners. So think of it as an oval in the corners, and the higher the size is, the more it closes in on the middle. This is a great way to focus someone's eyes to the center of the image. But also, in my opinion, I think a vignette can make or break an image. So if I go to vignette size 100% and keep it at the highest volume, I think to me this is a bit distracting. So I would probably 75% and then maybe just reduce it a little bit. That way it's a very just subtle vignette, but really it's up to you. Next is your lens distortion, and if you increase this, it pulls in the middle of the image but keeps the sides the same, and if you go all the way to the end here, it gives it more of like a fisheye lens look. Next is your chromatic aberration, And if you start increasing this, you'll notice around Sam that some of the colors start getting distorted and separated. This is typically a lens defect, and in some sort of photo editing software, there's typically a little check mark saying that, hey, I want to remove the chromatic aberration. So really, this is more of an artistic thing. This is a personal preference, and the option is there for you to choose it. So the next two tabs, you have options to change Sam and Lou, and this is really just personal preference. So you can show Sam, you can have poses, expressions, but what I really want to highlight is this Sam's eyeline thing. So let me zoom in real quick. So if I move this camera around, you'll see that he's kind of just looking in the same direction that he already was like in the game. But if I change it to camera, now he's going to be following the camera. Now this is a feature I actually really appreciate, because anytime you're taking a picture of someone and you're able to see them eye to eye, you can kind of connect with the person through this photo. So the fact that you can just change it around and he's looking at the camera, it gives it more of like a personal touch. Next is your frame tab, and if you cycle through the frames, you have something like the cinema crop bars, which is my personal favorite, as well as a bunch of frames that fit the game's themes and the overall aesthetic. I think a lot of these look really good. Next, you have the option to add a logo, and it's not just the logo of the game, there's also titles and so on that fit the game as well. Not only can you fit the logo, you can also change the logo color, as well as the position. You can also rotate it as well. The only suggestion I have is to add the ability to change the size of the logo. That would be nice to have. Next, you have the light tab, and you have up to 3 lights you can work with. So go ahead and turn on light 1, and you'll see that this might be a little tricky to understand at first, but it's really not that difficult once you start going. So let's talk about the controls, but to do that I need to change the camera angle. So with the left stick, if you move it forward or backwards, this actually increases or decreases the radius around Sam. So how close or how far away do you want the light to be from Sam himself? Moving the left analog stick left or right, moving it left will make the light go around Sam counterclockwise, and moving it to the right will have the light go around him clockwise. So moving the right analog stick around, this actually changes the direction of the cone where the light is facing. So what you can do if you do L2 or R2, so let's say we do R2, we can raise the radius up and then use the right analog stick to point down. And let's say I use the left stick to go clockwise around Sam. And now I can have this spotlight kind of from above. The controls are a little tricky at first, but it's actually very intuitive once you get going. So leaving this light on, let's move on to the shadows. You have the ability to turn on or off the shadows. This is a personal preference, and personally speaking, I would leave the shadows on. That way it looks a little bit more realistic, but the option is there for you. Next is the light intensity, and you can actually decrease or increase how bright the light is. Next is your hue, and this is where you have the ability to change the color of the light. Speaking of color, you also have this saturation slider as well. So it's set to 100%, that way the color is popping and it's right there in your face, but you have the ability to tone down the color if you'd like. So if I move the slider down, you'll see that the red isn't as red once I move the slider down. I'll leave it at 100, that way you can see the differences for the next two options, which is the spread and softness. So next is your spread, and this is actually the size of the light. So that circle that's around Sam's face, if we decrease the spread right here, you'll see that the size of the light is getting smaller. And you can kind of see where the light itself starts to cut off. Moving on to the softness, this is actually the feather or the edge of the light itself. So if we decrease the softness, you'll notice that there is a hard defined line between the light and where the light isn't. And if you increase the softness, you'll see that it starts to smooth out the edges and it blends in a lot better. If you found this video helpful, please like this video and check out this playlist of other photo modes I've looked at in other games. That's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you next time.